The Leafs get set for liftoff at the Traverse City Prospect Tournament. Nick Alberga with you. A quick hitter on Leafs Morning Take. Of course, no Rosie at the Leafs Nation 401, where you can subscribe on YouTube. You could also just search Leafs Morning Take wherever you find your podcasts, and we'll pop up. I wanted to get everybody set for the upcoming Prospect Tournament over the weekend. Of course, the Maple Leafs in action in 3 different games: Columbus, Dallas, and Detroit. And I thought, who better than Daily Faceoff's Stephen Ellis to help break things down, associate editor and prospect analyst. Perfect for the role. Stephen, how are you, buddy?
I'm great, Nick. How you doing?
We're good. I'm very good, I guess I should say, because there's no Rosie, so I usually answer on his behalf. But I got to ask you this question, because we had this spirited debate, I guess we'll call it, the other day regarding Matthew Knies. And it's funny, as we have this conversation, I just saw Luke Hughes was supposed to go and is no longer going for the New Jersey Devils. So where do you sit on the Matthew Knies front? Should he be playing in this tournament?
I don't think he'll play every game. We typically don't see guys play the whole tournament. With Hughes in New Jersey, they're going to be playing the Buffalo tournament, and for them, they're just looking and say, okay, we'd rather have you at these practices and don't need to worry about you here. But with Nice, I like him getting into the swing of things here, kind of like Luke Hughes. He got to play those couple games at the end of the season, but with Nice, he was injured at the end of the year. It'd be nice to see him start the year on the right foot here. So I think I think they play 3 games, they're going to probably only play maybe 1 or 2. It typically happens when a guy like Nick Robertson would never play every single game of this tournament. So I'm glad he's there, getting the opportunity to just keep playing. This is better than the alternative, which is sitting around waiting for training camp. But I don't expect him to play a lot.
And this is the first big true test for Matthew Knies since suffering that concussion last year. And he did reveal the other day, by the way, that he was cleared to go for game 6 if that second round went against Florida to 6 games. So, here better than never. I think my opinion was in the fact that he shouldn't have played in this tournament, just more so because I think players take bigger liberties. I mean, you got something to prove. We saw in the Leafs prospect camp this summer, didn't we?
Yeah, we saw that with Ronnie Hervonen. So this is something where you got to keep him adjusted there, keep him making sure he doesn't get hurt or anything like that. But at the same time, I think he wants to be there. I think he wants to keep playing and improve himself. Again, like there's so much pressure, I think, on him already for a guy that's played just a handful of NHL games. Where could he be the number 1 left winger, number 2, number 3? I think at this point, just let him play, let him see what he could do. We're seeing a couple other teams play their high-end college prospects. I will note that last year Ottawa let Jake Sanderson go and we saw how important he was in that team. And that was something where they could have easily said, no, we don't want you to play, but they had him in there. Montreal sending David Reinbacher in Buffalo too. So I expect that this is something where, as my cat Blue comes to say hello,
I like it.
it's something where they just give him the reps, give him that opportunity to just keep playing.
I'm trying to be so careful to temper expectations, and I think Leafs Nation need to be the same way. Easier said than done, of course, but like I even heard the conversation the other day, and I sort of forgot. Like Cole Caulfield in Montreal, like it took him a while to really get cooking. He actually even went to the American Hockey League before he really found his game after that brilliant showing. It's very similar to me that what we saw from Matthew Knies last year, where he was like a difference maker. So that's why I'm trying my best to temper expectations. But like, what's the consensus out there in the scouting community when it comes to Matthew Knies? Like, what's his ceiling?
Like I'll be fully honest, there were a lot of games last year where I thought he was maybe the 3rd or 4th best player on Minnesota.
Yeah.
Obviously, he goes out there and he was a finalist for the Hobie Baker, and he does so much away from the puck that's important, like hitting. He's very good defensively, so he's a very solid player that I think, you know, when you look at guys like Zach Hyman, you look at guys like Michael Bunting, who are these valuable players that could kind of play in the top 6. And I do expect that to be the case with Knies. I think he is maybe that number 1 left wing option long term there. But when it comes to, he played well, I think, in those games that we saw him at the end of last season, but he was kind of running this high of going for the national title. Obviously, he lost that. He had something to prove. He was playing a lot less than the NHL players, so something where he was much more rested compared to everybody. Plus, he's young, so he's got all this energy. But I would expect it to be a bit of a slow start, maybe right away, especially if he doesn't get that number 1 left wing spot. If it's going to go to Domi, if it's going to go to Bertuzzi, you're going to shove him down the lineup. He's not going to be playing with the super high quality players you would hope he could be playing with. So I don't expect a huge rookie season from him. Like I did my recent rookie rankings, I had him. I think I was like closer to the bottom of the top 10, but that's still a good thing. Like we're still talking about a guy who is a very good value pick that I do think is going to be a very valuable piece of this team. But if he doesn't shine right away, that's fine. This is still a young kid trying to adjust to playing in the professional hockey. That's not easy.
So Knies is the big boy on this roster, but who are some other names that we'll be watching really closely the next couple days?
Well, the one that I really kind of grew to love last year was defenseman William Villeneuve. I think that's someone that may have not been a lock by any means to be an NHL player, but just continues to show why he was a valuable QMJHL player at one point, why he was a high pick. I'm also excited to see what Topi Nimella can do. To me, I think he's after losing Rasmus Sandin, who to me was one of the better young defensemen in this organization in a long time, and obviously Liljegren's there. Niemela is a guy that I think is going to be very solid to watch. Ty Voigt will be interesting to see how he can kind of adjust to playing against some guys that are going to be trying to knock him out every single shift because he's a skilled player, but has no physical ability basically to throw hits or anything, and that he gets knocked down a lot. So it'll be interesting to see him. And I'm also, it'll be interesting to see which goalie kind of stands out, where they've got the opportunity to play a different goalie every single game. I'm high on Pexa. I think he's a very solid player from Russia, and then you got Dennis Hildeby, where he's going to be embarking on that Marley season. So how can he start this year in a way? So those are the guys that I'm looking at.
So not to throw you under the bus, but we're having a couple pops over in Nashville at the draft, and you had mentioned that you weren't a big fan of the Easton Cowan selection. Has your mind or your opinion changed on that selection for the Leafs, and what should we expect from him this weekend?
I can't say it has changed. I still am questioning that decision there from the draft him so high. You know, a guy that a lot of people I talked to said, yeah, he was a high riser, did really good in the second half of the year, good playoffs. But we're talking about third round player at this point that went into the first round. So I think a lot of people were shocked by that. But this is something where you just kind of have to trust their development staff. You know, like the scouts are doing what they're paid to do. And I think it's something where let's see how this plays out. It'll be interesting to see kind of how he does perform because after watching him in some scrimmages in the development camp back in July, I didn't think again that he was a standout player by any means. And talking to some other people that were there, they kind of seemed to agree. So, I guess you got to play the patient game here. But I got to say, he's a good two-way player that works really hard. And guys like that will find opportunities. So it'll be interesting to see how he kind of looks in the first time in a Leafs uniform.
You're very tied into the scouting community. I need you to be painfully honest here. What's the consensus on the Leafs prospect system right now? How are people feeling about it?
They are one of the worst in the entire NHL, but you'd expect that when you look
Yeah.
at a lot of the teams that are near the bottom in terms of quality. You're looking at Tampa Bay, you look at Boston, you're looking at
Yeah.
Colorado, and you're starting to see some trends here that it is typically the better teams in the NHL that are there, and that's what happens when you're not drafting high. You know, when you look at a couple years ago when they were getting Matthews and Marner and Nylander, like things look great. Right now, you're not looking at that where you're maybe looking at the top 10 prospects and you're like maybe two or three of them will become NHL players. So that's going to happen. Something like this when Matthew Knies is out of the equation, this group looks even worse. So that will be a little bit of a tough one next summer, but that's kind of how we would expect it to be at this point.
Yeah, understandable. And I was just going to ask to wrap, like outside of Nyes, is there anybody we're going to see this weekend that's relatively close to being in the NHL or making a debut here?
I think Niemela for sure, a guy that I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the first guys called up. I do think Willem Villeneuve should get an opportunity. I think that there's a lot there for him to be a third pairing defenseman that's cheap and you can kind of throw in a bunch of different situations. Kind of after that, it's kind of tough. I do like Fraser Minton a bit more than I'd say I liked him a year ago. I just think the thing with him is he's got the size. Talking to players about him, they say like, we don't know if he's going to just send us through the glass or not on a given shift. And then he also puts up a lot of points. So Fraser Minton in particular will be one to watch this year because he's going to be kind of the guy in the WHL for Kamloops. And I think that's something where he was kind of overshadowed when they brought in a bunch of big players last year. So keep an eye on him this weekend and the rest of the year.
Well, any hockey is great hockey for Leafs Nation. So we'll watch with bated breath over the weekend. Steven, thanks for this, bud.
Yeah, no problem.
There you have it. Daily Faceoff. Steven Ellis. I'm Nick Alberga. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already at the Leafs Nation 401, and we'll talk soon. Take care.